Hello, hello. Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. For those who are here, for those who are intrigued to come in, I'm going to invite everyone to come to our session on how can financial leaders build a just economy. So I want to talk about leaders that prioritize ethics and equity alongside traditional growth models. You know, the World Bank's March 2024 Global Poverty Update highlights the alarmingly high rise of extreme poverty. So as we face these growing inequalities, this conversation will explore how leaders can reshape financial systems to foster inclusive development, ensuring economic opportunities that are accessible to all communities. So let's dive into how we can pave the way for a more ethical and sustainable future. And we're going to do that with my fabulous panel. We have Her Excellency Nadia Al Saeed, the CEO of Bank Al Etihad. Welcome to the panel. Big round of applause for her. We have Marie-Claire Daveu, Chief Sustainability and Institutional Affairs Officer at Kering Group. She also gets some applause. We have Sophia Swire, Managing Partner and Founder at GEDI VC, and Elizabeth Vazquez, CEO and co-founder of WeConnect International. Welcome to the stage, Elizabeth. I'm going to take your seats. Perfect. All right. I also want to remind everyone that because we have an intimate group, this is meant to be an interactive conversation. So if you have any questions for our panelists, this is the time to get some face-to-face time, some one-on-one questions. So raise your hand, and I'll be sure to call on you if you have questions. So let's go ahead and begin with, may I call you Nadia?
Sure.
Let's go ahead and begin with Nadia. Nadia, as I mentioned in the beginning, extreme poverty is increasing despite massive global wealth. As a leader in regional banking, are current measures of economic progress even remotely adequate, in your view, for measuring real human well-being? And given your experience, are investors valuing the right things when it comes to poverty and inequality?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Actually, I think in today's world, it's clear that whatever measures that we have been doing, they have not been enough. I mean, probably the world is at one of the most advanced phases of humanity. And, you know, we're talking since the morning about AI, about state-of-the-art status that we are in, and yet we know that poverty is rising. We know that people's well-being is not where it should be. So I really think that we need to rethink, and probably coming from where I come from, which is Jordan, it's a country with limited resources, and people are the main capital that we have. So we do understand how important it is to make sure that it all starts, to understand that it all starts with people and it ends with people. So it's all about their well-being, basically, yes. And how can you really make sure what you do is inclusive and covers what needs to be done. Of course, at the same time, I believe we have a great opportunity because, I mean, with all of this development, this idea or this notion now that technology, innovation, business and sustainability can be at the best point ever, where you can leverage all of this to solve problems of humanity and to make sure whatever we do is really in favor of the well-being of people. So it's a great opportunity, and maybe also with things happening in the world recently, what we faced through COVID, climate change challenge, probably we also learned all of us learned that we all make it together or we sink together.
Yes.
So it's definitely a very important thing. With that said, I think that, you know, like GDP growth alone is never going to cut it. And so definitely we need to focus on things like the Human Development Index and what do you need to do with that, and probably learn from countries like the Nordic model, for example, Sweden, Norway, who have managed to find the right balance between growth and well-being and human sustainability, basically.
I love what you said, and that's our first takeaway. It starts with people and it ends with people, and ultimately it's sink or swim, and we're all in this together.
Exactly.
Sophia, now on to you. You know, the traditional economic playbook has failed to lift billions out of poverty. with your work empowering women entrepreneurs, is capitalism inherently, in your view, incompatible with social justice, or is it time for a radically new approach to rethink capitalism?
So I have an interesting background in the sense that I've straddled both sides of this. I started out as an investment banker at a time when they used to say that greed is good, back in the 80s. And I put that life on hold to go out to the Hindu Kush and set up for-profit little mini private schools targeting girl child education. And then more recently, I've been working to empower women in Afghanistan and Pakistan through skills and enterprise development. So you talk about worker-owned cooperatives, which I think is the opposite end of the spectrum from extractive capitalism. I set up a worker-owned and artisan-owned cooperative in Afghanistan in order to enable artisans to seek access to global markets. And as a model, it worked really well because they had absolutely nothing. But I think that we cannot, as a sort of liberal democracy, if that's what you can call us, go to the far opposite extreme. I don't think the socialist model has proven to work. I think the sort of left-wing liberal governments that we've traditionally seen in the Nordics have produced a very equitable society, but I don't think that all countries are ready for such a model. And I actually wanted to speak about a longer time frame. Over 50 years, all the social indices for extreme poverty have actually improved because of capitalism. And I wanted to just give you a few more stats, if I may. So in 1990, about 1.9 billion people, or 36% of the global population, lived in extreme poverty, defined as living on less than $1.90 a day. By 2019, which is the last time they did this analysis, the number had fallen to around 8.4% of the world's population, or roughly 650 million. And that's largely due to this capitalistic, market-driven economic growth that we've seen coming forward in countries like China and India. So I think it's a balance. I think we need to look at inclusive capitalist models,
yes,
not dropping the capitalist structure altogether.
Does anybody else want to chime in on this question? Any other models that you think are worth looking at, Marie-Claire or Elizabeth?
Go.
Well, WeConnect International works with very large corporations and governments and multilaterals that want to buy products and services from women-owned businesses. And I do agree that having a conducive ecosystem where you have the banks and you have the private sector and you have the multilaterals, the NGOs, all working together to ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity to contribute and to benefit from economic growth and from wealth. So I think as long as we always have our purpose in mind, for what reason are we doing all of this? It's not just to make money. Ultimately, we're using money so that we have peace, security, happiness, joy, time with our friends and family. So I think if we can just be more purposeful in how we build our models and make sure that everyone is involved in building those models, but especially the role of underutilized communities, including the role of women, because they tend to build business models that are focused on, by default, ESG, the being sustainable, do no harm, be inclusive, make sure you create jobs for the people that need it the most and who can add value to your company, and have good governance and transparency and accountability. So I think that that's really, for me,
that's
what
great
this
that
is
this
about.
is a panel of all women. Yes, because I do think that purpose is really important. Prioritizing what is truly meaningful is really important. So kind of keeping a through line going here, investing in people. We heard about actually some of the benefits of capitalism, in the past 2 decades, and also this importance of purpose and not just money for money's sake. Marie-Claire, on to you. Every economic program has winners and has losers. In your role at Kering, balancing sustainability and institutional responsibility, when designing these initiatives for inclusive growth, whose interests do you think are being ignored or sidelined in the pursuit of supposedly greater good? Like, who do you think benefits most when the invisible hand steers the market?
Okay. So perhaps to come back to the first answer, when we speak now about sustainability, I think it's important to say that we mention the environmental side, but also, of course, the social side. That's why I like to use the sustainability world. After, I think today, if you want to develop a business, you have really to think, of course, about the financial performances, but it's not possible to develop your business for the long run if you don't include in your strategy the sustainability side. So, in a nutshell, to pay attention to the people and to pay attention to the planet. So that's why if I speak about Kering, I think three important things. The first, we don't see at all sustainability as a cost, but we see sustainability as an investment. And perhaps it's easier in comparison with other corporates because we are a family-listed company, so we are not only thinking for the short term, but we are also thinking for the long term. So first thing. Second thing, we are also really convinced that our clients, of course our employees, but also our clients, are more and more interested in knowing when you buy a luxury products, where the raw materials are coming from, how they are produced. A very important topic, and sometimes people smile, but I think they are making a strong mistake about animal welfare. We are in luxury, and we see that people, okay, you use leather, but they want to be sure that we have a good treatment for animals. The last point also, we are speaking about employees, customers, but also regulation. All over the world, the regulation is becoming more and more demanding. Yesterday, I was mentioning the CSRD, but in Asia, you have new regulation. In the United States, depending on the states, you have regulation. And last but not least, it's about investor and financial analysts. I don't say that they are all convinced for ethical reasons about sustainability, but they see sustainability as a way to manage risk. So in their risk management approach, sustainability is becoming key. So that's why no choice to develop the performances in a 360 approach.
I love that you mentioned animal welfare. It came up in other panels that I was in, and of course you're in luxury, so that's extremely important. On to you, Your Excellency. FinTech promises greater financial inclusion, but it often replicates existing inequalities because of the algorithms. How can we ensure that these new tech solutions actually drive equitable outcomes? And what new technologies are you seeing that create transparency and empower these vulnerable populations, some which are unbanked also, to break down these biases in the financial system?
Yeah. Well, I think that, in general, because we are as a bank and me as a person, we're very much invested in women, banking for women as well. So I always say that, let's say, going digital now could be a great opportunity, but it could take us back to square one, because it could be a great opportunity to start everything again and to give people to give women a fair chance, etc. But it could replicate the biases of the physical world, basically, if we're not careful. So for that, I would say, number one, education and STEM education for everyone, including women, is going to become very, very important, because people need to be educated for them to be able to benefit from what's happening and to take the good jobs and all of that. Number two, I would say that also, you need access. So you need to make sure that people have access to internet, of course. Having said that, what we see is that the new trends in digital banking could be an opportunity. It could provide opportunity for people in remote areas. But of course, we have to make sure that we do take care of the data, make sure that the data used is unbiased, make sure that the algorithms are not biased and they don't carry with them those biases from before. We need to make sure that what we see now is that we're deploying participation or participatory approaches where you actually include the stakeholders in the design of products and services, and you tailor to what they want. We're seeing a lot of partnerships with fintechs and otherwise to make sure that we actually know what these people want, to make sure that we offer what is required. You also see that, for example, in technology, open banking today is a very important development in banking where people have the freedom to choose their financial service provider. So they have the right to give or not to give their data and to know where it's being used, and at the same time to switch from one user to the other if the services were not fair. There is full transparency, and I think regulators are going more and more in that direction. We see that with fintech and with digital banking, we always use scorecards for access to finance and access to credit, and we need to make sure that those scorecards are also not biased and they don't actually get influenced by characteristics like ethnicity or gender. And we may need to make sure that, and it's a good opportunity also today that scorecards can use alternative data. It's not only your banking data. So if you were someone who did not have access to banks before, now we can use data from your mobile invoice, from utility invoices, and so on. So I think there's a lot going on in digital banking. And if we are aware and if we actually are deliberate about it, I think we can make sure that we are more and more inclusive. And with that, from my experience also with us as a bank, we have something, a proposition that we developed. We call it non-financial services. So with everything we do, when we actually target women, entrepreneurs, SMEs, we make sure that with it, we launch a full suite of non-financial services for education, for advisory, for inclusion of people.
Because you already have their trust. In some of these emerging markets, lack of trust can also be an opportunity, where if you gain someone's trust and you bank them, then you can offer them healthcare, education, and other services. Elizabeth, on to you now. With your global work connecting women-owned businesses to markets, what data convinces these skeptical CEOs and investors that impact isn't just charity, but a viable business strategy that actually outperforms?
Well, any business that wants to be really successful needs to think about all of their potential customers. And if you don't have your employees, your leadership, your supply chain that reflects who you're actually trying to sell to, you're probably not as profitable because you're probably not anticipating all of the needs of your customers. And so the corporations we work with that have $4 trillion in annual purchasing power, they spend 1% of that with women-owned businesses. That's a problem. If women make the majority of consumer purchasing decisions, over 70%, sometimes 80%, that's just bad business.
That's leaving money on the table.
Exactly. And so you really need to think about, do I have access to all of the best talent? Do I have access to all of the solutions to all of my problems? And am I being inclusive and proactive in making sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to compete for my business? I'm not going to give you a contract because you're a woman-owned business or because you're another, underutilized community member. But if those community members aren't in your competing for your business, you're not really getting access to the best of what the world has to offer.
I want to remind everyone, if you have questions, this is a terrific opportunity to ask these amazing panelists about their areas of expertise. We have 10 minutes left remaining, so be sure to get your questions in if you do have questions. Sophia, I'm going to move it on to you now. Given your work with literacy programs in Afghanistan, if access to technology and financial literacy remains unequal, is this kind of quote-unquote democratization simply creating new forms of exclusion?
It will, of course, if it continues, if we can't find a way to bridge the digital divide, but it's also an incredible opportunity. So 10 years ago, we created the first digital literacy training initiative for women in Afghanistan. When I say we, I'm talking about my nonprofit Future Brilliance, which is separate from the Future Fund GEDI. And we developed SIM card-enabled, dust-proof, solar-powered tablet computers and distributed them to women artisans, jewelers, and gem cutters. And then we gave them their own web pages. We taught them how to sell directly to consumers. And we brought them into the digital economy. We're talking 2013, 2014. And it was extraordinary to see how these women took like ducks to water to these tablets, even women who were illiterate. So there was a wonderful woman from the North, Hazara lady, in her 50s actually, a war widow, and she was able to run a business, grow and run a business where she was providing piecework to 2,000 villagers, of which 300 were war widows like her and the others were men. And she was able to reach her market through digital technologies. So I think that there are certain barriers that need to be overcome, and there's extraordinary upside and opportunity. The barriers are, of course, everybody needs infrastructure. There needs to be satellite access or mobile telephone access to data so that you can actually have an online presence, ideally. You also need to be able to afford or have access to, ideally, a smartphone, a tablet, or a laptop. And actually, right now, with our Future Brilliance hat on, we're in the process of shipping 200 laptops out to one of the very few private girls' schools in Afghanistan where they teach girls over the age of 12. So I think digitizing education, enabling girls to have access to the internet and to high-quality education from abroad, if necessary, or from the leading universities and institutions in the cities in some of these countries, is absolutely critical and key. The other thing is the affordability of data, because in countries like Afghanistan, the data is distributed mainly through the mobile telephone companies, and they can be very extractive. So one of the things I would like to look at is persuading some of the mobile telephone providers to offer at scale with a reduced margin, or to negotiate space on some of the satellites like Elon Musk's Starlight or some of the bigger satellite companies in Marsat we were talking to a few years ago about taking up their capacity and making it affordable. And then you were talking about digital literacy training, absolutely critical. So on the for-profit side, we've identified one of the leading fintech companies in North Africa, a company called Cherry, which already has a valuation of $100 million. Female founder, Sophia Alj, incredible woman. And with her fintech company, she's providing access to finance for mom and pop stores in the rural areas of Morocco. And she's agreed, once she starts working with us, to allow us to link her to the UNHCR, to the IOM, to the IRC, these refugee and displaced people humanitarian agencies, to enable them to digitize some of their products and services, including access to finance, which is critical if you're a marginalized person and you don't have a bank account.
So I was just given the 3-minute mark. If you guys want to ask questions, Marie-Claire, I want you to have the final word before we go to a quick lightning round. So we just heard some really beautiful examples from the powerhouses present here, and examples really, I think, beyond the data is what people will take from the panel. Can you share a specific example of an unconventional but inspiring project or a company or an initiative that proves that financial leadership can genuinely improve lives? I mean, you lead sustainability initiatives that touch real communities.
So in 1 minute, 2 examples. The first is the fact that if we want to change the paradigm, we have to work together, and above all, companies together, saying that we don't do that for a competitive advantage. And what concrete example is the Fashion Pact that we created under the umbrella of the G7 in 2019. As Kering, we took the leadership to have in the same coalition luxury brands such as Chanel, Kering, but also fast fashion brands, Nike, Inditex. So it's really to say together, we want to change what is happening on the ground. And to make environmental and social side, we created with L'Oréal, it's also a big French company, and also with Inditex, a Spain company, a fund for regenerative agriculture.
I'm a big fan of both, so big fan.
Regenerative agriculture, and I think doing this kind of thing, it's very interesting because we transform conventional agriculture into regenerative agriculture. It's good for people, it's good for the planet. So I think it's to show that we don't do that for the competitivity or competitiveness.
Thank you so much for that answer. One more quick lightning round before we have to wrap it up. answer with one word or a phrase, first thing that comes to mind, and I'll start with you, Elizabeth. When you think about, what is possible if we create the just economy that we know we can, if there's intentionality, what is one word that comes to mind that is reflective of that future?
It's a phrase, purchasing power. Just be thoughtful with how you spend your money. We can move very large amounts of money in a very short period of time to the communities we care about if we're just thoughtful about how we spend our money.
So purchasing power, and that's something, by the way, that's an individual course of action all of us can take. Nadia, what's one phrase or word that comes to mind with this brighter future that we talked about?
Opportunity, huge opportunity.
Beautiful. Marie-Claire?
I will say only no choice. We have planet boundaries and we have to include people. So no choice to do it.
Inclusive. And Sophia, the last word?
So for me, it's all about investing in women. Venture-backed female-led companies outperform their male-led counterparts. They're more sustainable, they exit faster, and you make more money. So what's not to love?
And with that, we'll wrap the panel because it's a panel of women. Big round of applause for the women here. I'm going to ask all of you to get up. Ladies, one more big round of applause. We're going to take a photo.
Thank you to the moderator.
Thank you. The last word was investing in women, and look at this panel. Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
I'm actually going to stay on stage for the next panel, so if you guys want to join us, please don't be shy. Come on over. We have a great final session here happening at Lab 4.